Okay, this is the revised budget for this school year, 2012-13. We'll look at the original budget, hopefully at that June board meeting, if the legislature gets done in time. Okay. This year, I think, is a really great year to be part of Willmar Public Schools. There's just been a lot going on and a lot of change. And the way that the staff started the year, everyone received a water bottle, and in it was this that you see in front of you. And it had to do with what we were looking at this year. And we were looking at having motivated learners. If you remember, we started our year, we had a focus school, a priority school. We still do. Now we've gotten the SIG grant. Cheryl Nash is going to report to you on a lot more about that later on in this board meeting. But this has really been the focus. We've had a laser-like focus, purposeful practice, reflection and reaction, high expectations. People have been committed to the process, not actually committed. We've had collaboration, community engagement. It's just been a great year, and this is just kind of sums it up all in one slide of what we've been doing. So all of that kind of enters into the budget. One of the things that we've had is enrollment has been incredible this year. Our original budget, we were at 3,995 ADM, which is average daily membership. That's what we thought we were going to have for students. Right now, our revised estimate is 4,123. We brought in a kindergarten class. It was much bigger than we expected. I think we were looking at around 320. We brought in a kindergarten class at 330. We have been taking enrollments throughout the entire year. Typically what happens is the first day of school is usually close to the highest enrollment you'll have. Not this year for us. It just continues to climb. So we're pretty excited about that. And what that means for the basic formula is we have increased revenue of $722,000 just related to enrollment. And you'll see some other revenue increases. This is our enrollment history. You can see back in 2006-07, you can see how it's kind of goes down and up and then a little bit down. And we've been starting to call it stable enrollment, because it's just kind of floating like this. But you can see from 2011-12 where we ended the year with 4,020 ADM, and you could see the big jump, 4,123. Now you'll hear more about what we're looking at in the future in June when I present on the original budget for next year, but we're looking at pretty steady climbs if things continue the way they are right now. If we continue to graduate slightly smaller classes than the kindergarten classes we bring in, we'll just naturally have an increase every year. And then that doesn't even speak for what will happen to enrollment as people come into or leave the district. So with that, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the general fund. And these are your general fund revenues. The columns show you your the actual audit from last year, where we ended up, what our original budget was, and then what our revised budget is. And you can see that our revenue from our original budget to the revised budget is up $1.9 million. Local revenue is up about $128,000, and most of that relates to the donations we received for the one-to-one iPad program. We had great amount of community support, and so that is what most of that increase is. State revenue is up $824,000. Again, I told you about the $722,000, but there's also some other categorical revenue that's impacted by enrollment. So our total state revenue is up $824,000. Federal revenue, as you know, we have the SIG grant. That's considered federal revenue. So we have about a $500,000 increase for the SIG grant. We also have equivalent expenditures. And then we received an entitlement. It's called Rural and Low Income Schools. We received it based on our free and reduced numbers and based on the fact that we're rural. We don't know if we'll receive it again. The state just notified us this year. So it's kind of a year-by-year thing. What we were able to use it for was to kind of even out some of the things that we've done with SIG. We've added some cultural liaisons. At Kennedy, we were able to do the same thing at Roosevelt with that rural and low-income schools funding. So that was pretty exciting. The other reason for the increase is we were talking about federal sequestration. And so if you listen to the news right around the beginning of January, there was talk that it's been delayed. So what would have happened is a lot of our federal programs would have been cut instantly. And what we did as a district to prepare for that is we under budgeted all our programs by 10%, because that was about the amount that we would have been cut. So we didn't want to have to be making it up. Well, now what's happened is it's been delayed at this point, so we should be good for this year. So we've been able to hire more interventionists now with that money, so you'll see an increase in that as well. And then other revenues, as you know, we sold Lincoln. General fund expenditures, those are also increased. Those are increased by about $764,000. We were deficit spending in our original budget of about $1.7 million, and now in our revised budget, we're deficit spending about $600,000. So you can really see how that enrollment increase has helped us to lower that amount of deficit spending, but we are still deficit spending. So our increases, we have about $286,000 increase in salaries and wages, and again, that would be due to the SIG grant, the rural and low income funding, and then it's partially offset by, we had some staff, some special ed staff that were on staff here. What we have done is as that staff has retired, we have contracted out with the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative to fill in some of that. A lot of what that has to do is those are things where you wouldn't necessarily need a full-time person. You need part of a person. And so instead of us trying to hire and get someone, we're able to hire someone through the cooperative because they can hire a full person who will serve a few schools, and then that way we get what we need. So there's a little bit of a flip between salaries and wages and purchase services, and that's why it's not quite as increased. It's not increased quite as we thought it would be. Then you have employee benefits, and those trail. So as salaries go up, you're going to expect that employee benefits are going to go up just with FICA and workers' comp and TRA, but then also the changes are due to employee benefit choices. Some employees decide that they want to take our insurance, some employees decide they want to go off of our insurance, so that varies based on employee choices. Then we have purchase services up $142,000. Again, I just talked to you and explained about the service cooperative. In addition, the utility budgets, we've increased those based on trending and some of the costs. Electricity is coming in a little bit higher, so that's slightly increased. Then supplies are up about $83,000. We do have some additional spending for special education, individualized instructional supplies, and then also the grants and donations. So some of the grants that we've received, some of that spending is coming through that supply line. Capital expenditures up about $171,000. Again, we have a big focus on technology. So we've been leasing iPads, we've been purchasing some iPads. So while at the senior high we have this one-to-one iPad initiative, we still have classroom sets that we've purchased for the elementary schools, for the middle schools. So there's still that big focus. And then we've also done some replacing of some custodial equipment. And let me just go back. And then the other two are small increases. So to talk about fund balance, the board has a minimum fund balance goal. We like to have a minimum goal. It's not actually like a target or this is where we need to be, but we don't want to go below this. And so that would be 6%. And so that's what you see on the top line. Where we ended up in the audit was at 15.52% of expenditures, and that was about $6.5 million. Now, this is the unassigned fund balance, so we do have fund balance in other categories, operating capital and those things, but this unassigned fund balance is where we do most of our business through. And then our original budget was at 9.76% of expenditures, or $4.3 million. Well, we had expected our fund balance to come in a little bit lower, but every year we do a great job at towing the line with expenditures. So as that audit number is a little bit higher, then so is our revised budget number. It's higher for that, and then because we're not deficit spending as much, as I mentioned earlier. So for our revised budget, we're looking at coming in at $6.3 million fund balance, which is about 14.13% of expenditures. Are there any questions on the general fund? Okay, and now you can see that in graph form. You can kind of see where we were and where we've been. In 2007, we were at about 15%. then there was some intentional spending down of the fund balance, and as that started to happen, you could see in 2009, we were at 6.45%. And then we had some budget cut years, and you could see we've grown that fund balance a little bit, and now last year was the highest, and this year we expect to end at 14.13%. Now, a few years from now, well, we have the opportunity with the SIG grant to potentially have it renewed for us for the next 2 years, and Cheryl can talk to you more about that. But then after that point, we're going to want to be looking at what are we going to keep, what are we going to do, how are we going to change that. So it's something to think about with our fund balance, because if we are going to want to continue on with some of these programs, depending on what the legislature does, depending on all of these different things, we might need some fund balance in there to continue that program on, or even if we decide to keep half of a program or whatever. And that'll all come out as we continue to move forward through time, as you continue to look at budgets. You'll hear more things about that.
Well, and our 6% was set during the time of trying to achieve that when we came out of SOD, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so when the auditors were here last year, they were talking, last November, they were talking that they recommend schools are anywhere from 15 to 25% fund balance. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And
That's
so
correct.
now we are audited at 15%?
Well, the auditors, that's the range that they say.
Right,
Yes,
that's
our audit
their
was at
range, but we came in at the
15.52.
bottom of their suggested rate for schools and the schools that they audit around the state,
Yep,
correct?
that's
Okay,
correct.
Just wanted to verify that, because that 6% to 15% is a huge number,
Mm-hmm.
and we continue to keep the 6% from SOD rather than adjusting it to reflect the current way we budget and work and are funded,
Yep,
which I still have an issue.
I know.
Thank you.
Pam, how much of the percentage of that 14.13 would you estimate are those soft dollars, those grant dollars? And what they have worry about when we look at these figures, it's very easy to get caught up with the dollar signs that we have right now, but we've got I've heard at least 2 or 3 grants in there.
Well, our biggest grant is our SIG grant. Now,
Right.
grant dollars are fully spent, so they're not in fund balance, but let's say we were going to keep going with it. If we kept going with the SIG grant exactly as it is right now, we spend $500,000.
Yeah.
That's how much our SIG grant is.
So right now, none of the grant dollars are reflected in that 14.1.
No, because we fully
Okay.
spend our grant
All right.
dollars.
But we were deficit spending this year without the increase in tuition, which helped us save some of those dollars. We would have been significantly lower on the reserve amount.
Right,
Yeah,
because we were ready
absolutely.
to do
'Cause we
that,
were
to get
spending down.
the level of
Yep.
instruction we felt we needed prior to.
So thank goodness for enrollment.
Correct. The enrollment has made a difference in
Right.
that respect, so we're happy about that. Okay, food service, our biggest increase is in federal dollars in the original budget. Every year we go for the fresh fruits and veggies federal grant, and so we don't have it budgeted in the original budget, and now it is in the revised budget. We did only receive that grant for one of our 2 schools. This year we've got it for Roosevelt, but we did not receive it for Kennedy. As more schools apply, that free and reduced percentage gets higher and higher, and so we made it for Roosevelt but not for Kennedy. And then we were awarded an additional 6-cent reimbursement per meal, federal dollars, for the Healthy and Hunger-Free Kids Act, because we were complying with that. And your students have seen changes in the lunchroom and how it's presented, and plates and trays and colors and all kinds of different things. So that's a really big increase for us. And then also with the increased enrollment, we're serving more meals. So we get more reimbursement, more meals we serve.
So we got that extra money because we have a greater free and reduced at Roosevelt? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
For the fresh fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
the line was so fine, and our 2 schools were so close to that line, but Roosevelt got the grant and Kennedy didn't. In the first year, Kennedy got it and Roosevelt didn't, then both schools got it, and now Roosevelt has it, but Kennedy doesn't.
But it's only like a 2% difference.
It's
isn't
so
it?
close. It's very, very close.
Depending on what day you look at
Yeah.
in the school year
Right.
too, because it changes.
Exactly. It was just very close. That's just how it worked out this year for us. So, and then for expenditures, basically, we've got the increased cost of the fresh fruits and vegetables, which that comes through salaries, benefits. It comes through purchase services, supplies and materials, because that's where food is. Again, with the supplies and the food are higher, we have more meals served, we're purchasing more food. Purchase services are higher because as we're finishing up the middle school remodel, we're going to be starting the remodel at Kennedy. There's some work with a freezer that needs to be done. So we're seeing that. And with our food service, we have had a pretty significant fund balance there. And the reason that we have is each year we've worked to be able to do some remodeling at one site. So we started at Roosevelt, moved to middle school, and now we're going to be on to Kennedy. But I think Kennedy's remodel is significantly smaller than the other schools were. Any more questions on food service? Okay, move on to community education. They have a big increase in local revenue of $177,000. That's based on participation in programs like Cardinal Place and other community education programs. They've received some grants and donations, and they've been able to hire a community engagement specialist and do some more with early childhood programming. There was a private donation that related just to early childhood programming, and that all comes through that local line. So then expenditures, you're seeing staffing increase. As increased participation happens in Cardinal Place, they need more staff to take care of the children. So that is in there, and then the community engagement specialist was hired. And then community ed is working with a consultant on just basically the future, kind of like we're doing with strategic planning. Community ed is doing the same type of thing, and they're looking at their programming and participation and how to get people really involved. And then in supplies, with partially with the grant from the community member, they purchased some creative curriculum for the early education programs. So there's quite a bit going on there as well. And then we also have the debt service fund, which is used to pay for our bonds. We have the senior high bond, building bond out there right now, and that'll be ending in 2015. And so, as you've heard at other board meetings at strategic planning, we're going to be starting a facility study and looking at that. And then we have fiduciary funds, which is a smaller fund. There's a couple scholarships run through there. Most of the scholarships are run through a community foundation. We just have a couple that we have. And then we have a proprietary fund, which is Delta Dental, and that's where our dental insurance runs through. So, out on the website, there will be the revised budget, the summary, which is about 36 pages. It's got additional detail line by line, some more narrative in there. And then the presentation that you see now will also be out on the website. So at this point, if there's no questions, I'd recommend approving this budget.
Is there a motion to approve the revised 2012-2013 budget?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That action item carries. Moving on to G2, approve the West Central Collaborative Budget Worksheet. Pam, Ms. Harrington again.
Yep. And Dr. Kierkegaard spoke about this earlier. We don't really know what's going to happen with legislation related to the integration revenue, but the Minnesota Department of Education is having collaboratives move on as if it's going to be somewhat business as usual. And so part of that is approving the integration revenue, and for the district, it's $599,401.08. So if we go ahead and approve this, then the collaborative's going to go ahead and build a budget for it. We don't know if this will be what happens, but if they do move forward and say, yep, we'll do integration another year, we're ready.
Okay.
Do we have their budget from last year? Do you remember?
It's the same.
It's the same?
It's the same dollar
It's the
amount.
same.
so.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the WCIC budget worksheet for year 2014?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action item carries. Very good. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Harrington.
you very much.